Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. I have my good friend Robbie and Andy here. They are the co-founders of the Rollup. Before we get too deep into the Rollup, tell us a little bit about how you got into this Web3 space. I'll be, of course, starting with my friend Robbie here.
I was in high school at the time. I got in 2016, so there wasn't very many tokens out there. Yeah, man. So set the scene for you. I'm sitting in my homeroom engineering class. Every day we walk in, I go directly to the right. It's basically a big computer lab. And so this entire class, we're supposed to be doing this engineering software, AutoCAD or SolidWorks type thing, but it's basically just one big computer game class. And so every day I walk in, my Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee because I'm a fucking junior in high school. I sit down next to my friends, and everyone's like, we don't start getting onto the engineering software until at least 20, 30 minutes into this hour-long class. The first 20, 30 minutes is always just shooting the shit, just hanging out, surfing the web, doing whatever, checking emails, checking grades, whatever, right? And so I would say about halfway through my junior year of high school, it was 2016, like I said, I started to get pretty deep into poker, and I lived about 15 minutes away from a casino in South Florida, and so it was one of those Indian reservation casinos. And I would get good grades, but I wasn't the best, most responsible student, so I would leave class to go play at this casino 15 minutes nearby. And after doing that for a while, my buddy was like, hey, stop being an idiot. Stop leaving class and goofing off. Just, if you want to play poker, just play poker online. We're literally on a computer anyway. He's like, just play poker online with Bitcoin. And I'm like, what's Bitcoin? And so that just immediately jumped me down the rabbit hole. Started playing poker with Bitcoin on some of these sites. That was it wasn't even on chain, right? It was still very, they had some cool, provably fair types of algorithms where they would provably shuffle the decks. And so it was sort of this Web3 gaming experience, but it didn't have ZK proofs or any of the more fancy cryptographic stuff now. But I had always been a math guy. And so automatically I was like, wow, this Bitcoin thing. When I started to learn about it, I was also kind of going on my own personal finance journey. I had summer jobs in high school. And so I started to make a little bit of money for myself. And I immediately was I had a couple $1,000 in my bank account, maybe just from working summer jobs. But immediately I was like, my money's getting inflated away. That was the start of it. And then it was wait, my money's not even there. These banks have fractional reserve banking. They only keep 10% of the cash on hand. What if I want to go withdraw my money and they don't have it? It's loaned out to another bank. So immediately it was these banks are making money hand over fist just by loaning out my money. Who gave them the right to do that, right? I probably signed it away on some paperwork opening the checking account. But immediately Bitcoin and cryptocurrency started to really become this worm mind virus in my brain, because it was the solution to a lot of these traditional financial problems that we really haven't even seen play out yet. In the U.S., we've seen it play out a little bit in some of these other, less fortunate, hyperinflative type of economies. But yeah, so first I started using Bitcoin, actually using it, making transactions, how to get it from somewhere, and then depositing it into this online poker room. And then quickly found out about Ethereum. And then this buddy who initially mentioned to me hey, you got to get into Bitcoin and play poker online. He got really, really deep into Monero, because at the time it was Bitcoin, ETH, Monero, Litecoin, and Dogecoin were the only cryptocurrencies online. He got super deep into Monero because it was, at the time, it was really one of the most technically sound, very security oriented, very technically progressive projects that were out there. They had ring signatures and all this crazy privacy and cryptographic technology, and it was super ahead of its time. And so really went down the rabbit hole. From 2016 to 2017, there was a massive run up, was basically going more into the investment and more just trading realm, because I quickly learned hey, I'm making a lot more money on Bitcoin appreciating than playing poker. And so all of these other cryptocurrencies, they have investment theses as well. And then started just kind of like trade altcoins. More and more started to pop up. The entire ICO craze in 2017 didn't really go into many ICOs, but there were so many tokens as a result of that era that I started just trying to pick them. Started getting into crypto Twitter a little bit, and then went on to Bittrex, and then just rode the 2017 wave a little bit. Graduated high school, got into college, became president of the University Bitcoin Club at University of Florida. 2017 to 2018 hit. 2018 was like the whole institutional wave. Enterprise blockchain was the thing. It's like blockchain, not Bitcoin. So we ended up rebranding that club. I was part of that transition. Made it into the University Blockchain Club instead of Bitcoin Club. Ended up growing that in the bear market from 4 guys when I first joined in 2017 to like 250 through a conference on campus in 2019, and then met Andy in 2017 in that club. It was immediate. There was only a few of us in there, but I was shitcoining around, as was he. And then we both were there, because it was an opportunity to learn more about what was going on here. And we saw the opportunity and just wanted to really use this as an opportunity to get ahead. And as a young guy going through college, I saw this as an industry that was only 5 years old. In 2016, the Bitcoin white paper had only been out 5 or 6 years. I was like, when I end up graduating college, I'm going to need 3 to 5 years experience to break into any industry that's out there. If I can there's no one with 5 years experience in the Bitcoin industry, and it's only 5 years old. And so I was on par with, the people that maybe had 20, 30 years experience in a different industry. I was on par immediately because I had broken into this industry that was only 5 years old. So ended up going through the club, making my ways there, grew the club quite a bit. Andy and I started to work much closer in 2020. Everyone was, college was out. Everyone was working online. Coronavirus was hit. So everyone was spending a lot of time online. And then we found DeFi, and it was a perfect time to just dig really deep into crypto and double down on everything that we had been learning about and hearing about, but had not seen play out in action, in practice. Was finally starting to come to fruition in 2020. Dug really deep into Compound, Aave, Uniswap, UMA, and just some of the Augur, which has kind of set the scene for Polymarket, and really just decided to dig deep into like the OG DeFi protocols, pretty deep into yield farming, and that was the origin for the Rollup. It started out as DeFi Slate, which was all of these yield farming tutorials. Essentially, we were teaching people how to use apps on chain, and it's funny because now, come full circle, everything is infrastructure, and everyone wants to know about the apps and like wants to use the apps, know how to use the apps, where are the apps. That's what we started out doing, and they're still here. It's just people want more. So that's kind of like the OG history of how I got in, and the origin story of DeFi Slate and the Rollup. And fast forward 2 or 3 years. Well, we've been doing it since 2020. Fast forward like 4 years at this point. We've really transitioned into more of the higher level research conversations, trying to push forward some of the narratives that we believe in, doing more of these ideological and infrastructure types of conversations, how to design blockchain architecture from the ground up. With all of the moving pieces that are out there now, Rollup has evolved into this credibly neutral place for some of the most intellectual people much, much smarter than myself, to come on and educate us. And then we do all these conversations in public because we find it valuable. Selfishly, like, I learn a ton. That's why we started, is to learn ourselves. And we quickly realized this information is valuable for others to learn about as well. And so now people are able to follow along. We have audience and community that are keeping track of these conversations. And now we're able to teach and learn at the same time. And we like to call it this collective learning experience, because everyone's knowledge is greater at the end of the day after having some of these conversations.
Yeah, but Rob got his math and philosophy degree. I dropped out. So like, this guy's just crazy about this collective knowledge. It's pretty funny. Our conversations are so funny. Like off air, it's like, I'm way too fast paced sometimes, and Rob's just so like meticulous and just into like the granite, like the finite details of things. And yeah, I think like the combination has been super fun to kind of like be a part of. And yeah, I think like our general idea is the like the first pillar is definitely that education and that building this like open platform for collective learning and to kind of help to understand that knowledge is power, and that if we can empower people through knowledge, and that's a super important kind of act and kind of career path to go on. And then selfishly we get to learn quite a bit. And then I think like the second one is like serving founders, right? Helping early stage founders with distribution, with capital, with consulting, branding, positioning, really helping these early stage teams, post seed round, post series A, go to market, really understand kind of the dynamics of certain niches and the certain narratives, and really just to serve founders and serve teams however we can. And so, yeah, it's been a really fun journey, man. I feel like what you're doing is similar, and it's fun to always see people, kind of start or kind of early stage media companies and content, and just trying to, put yourself out there. So props to you as well, man.
Yeah, I like it a lot what you guys are doing. I see a lot of similarities. I wanted to start essentially this week in startups, but for Web3, where I was essentially talking with founders that were building things because I didn't see that in the space. I guess I was so new to the space, I didn't even know what I didn't know. So I didn't even know about you guys existing. But let's go into your platform. So it's essentially you've got like the one pillar where it's education. So you're essentially having all these learning conversations in public. I also see you guys are constantly creating graphics. Talk to us a little bit more about like the education, because it seems like you guys are not only just having these conversations, but also doing a lot of research in the space. And I'll direct that towards Andy.
For sure. Yeah, man. I mean, I don't have any sort of technical or finance background, but I feel like relatively confident in my ability to like assess various kind of design choices, trade-offs when it comes to some parts of distributed systems. And that to me is like has been just a result of kind of being on all of these conversations, all of these podcasts, and having a lot of these. Then in addition to that, I think like the research aspect that we do is oftentimes trying to provide a place where people can come learn at this kind of middle ground, where a lot of the conversations that we have with teams behind the scenes can be highly technical, and then on the podcast and through our written content as well, we try to make it understandable for people who are kind of in the middle, or who are like a bit more sophisticated, devs, VCs, founders, other team projects, kind of maybe people with a distributed systems background or TradFi, or even just like people who trade on chain or on exchanges. I think our goal with this is to provide education that's actually digestible. And that's been kind of like the big part when it comes to creating it. But as far as like creating itself, like you really need a team. Like we have several people who work to source ideas, source agendas, build up different podcast ideas, panel strategies, research angles. Like without the team, it may seem like it's like Rob and I, but it's really like a team of several other people who really make this work. And so like my one big thing for anybody who's like trying to kind of grow in the space is like, you really got to figure out how you guys can utilize other people, utilize team to kind of build up this bigger machine to help you, right? Because if we can help kind of scale and do different things, such as getting all these content pieces together, organizing, scheduling, etc., we're able to then like spend more time learning, spend more time doing actual research, which we enjoy. So that like the education pillar is the core of it, and I kind of view it as like a public good in that sense, where our goal is to run a business here where I'm an entrepreneur. I've done a bunch of different things, but like the core mission of this is to provide a place where we can raise the collective knowledge of people, and having a strong team, sticking true to kind of your integrity, and avoiding certain types of paid promotional deals and collaborations and things can be super valuable to the long-term sustainability of the brand. And I think over the last 4 years, we've really shifted the way that we work with people and the way that we want our brand to be perceived. And really, it's been the help of a lot of advisors and kind of people in the space as well as outside. So if I was to give some like crucial advice for any kind of entrepreneur who's building a Web3, it'd be to figure out how you can build a team around you and figure out who you can learn from as far as mentors and advisors, and keep them close.
All right, I will have a very tactical question real quick, Robbie. So let's imagine that the Rollup goes away and somehow everyone forgets about you, all your educational material, your connections are gone. Let's talk about how you guys would kind of build back the Rollup if you had to start from scratch. Because I think a lot of people will hear this and be like, oh, you guys have been in the industry for like 4 years. But if you had to do it today, how would you guys start?
It's a good question. I mean, so part of to build on Andy's point about the team and the people, that's really what makes it, right? So yes, we do have a team of 7 and that has grown and these people have been with us for a long time. They help us do a lot of the logistical and operational things as well as research, but a lot of the team is also the entire industry. Like the Web3 industry is its own team. And there's a lot of infighting and competition, but ultimately, like, we're still on this mission that has not yet been fulfilled. The pie is much, much bigger. And ultimately, you can look at all these subsets. We have a chain abstraction team. We have a team working on ZK research. There's more technical teams, more DeFi teams. But ultimately, like, all of these people are the team. And we've been able to talk to a subset of these people on the Rollup and ultimately leverage a lot of their knowledge. Again, that becomes our knowledge, and then we just proliferate that amongst our community and the rest of the industry. And so, the mission is to empower people with knowledge as well as other things. And so that is part of my answer to your question.
That is the answer, though. It's like it's to build a network. It's to build a network first, I think. I think it's like creating content online and going to conferences if you can, getting grants from people to projects to kind of help do some coverage at a conference or something, go to conference, meet people, and also just put out content online, I think, and start to build your network. And then once you build your network, the opportunities will kind of come, and then you can be selective and choose the right one. I think that's kind of what you're getting at there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you guys mentioned, you have several members of your team. Talk to us a little bit about, what your team is doing for you. Is it like newsletter creation? Is it blogs? Is it research? Talk to us a little bit about like the core components of your media brand.
And do you want to?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to what we can do to kind of scale the higher level tasks, right? So I look at a business as like there's things that will pull the lever and push the needle, and there's things that kind of don't. And so like in the beginning, I think what it really is kind of like outsourcing the early things that don't necessarily push the needle to like the maximum level of extent, but that you're still doing to buy time. Things like content scheduling, things like building out a consistent Twitter page and posting content on social media. Like these are things that like when you're a first beginner, you have to kind of do it all on your own, but really it becomes like you have to do everything as a founder. And so I think that like having a team to help you with video editing, with content posting, with short form video editing, with scheduling, with angles, with written research, also utilizing AI, I think is a really, really underserved point here. One of our core theses has been we should always scale with software and automations before people. And so I think that like that's kind of how we've thought about it. And so over the last 4 years, like we've inspired by this entrepreneur online called Taylor Welch. What you get is you get these periods of time where you're kind of like flat, and then you go for a scaling point, and then you kind of adjust, and then you scale. And so throughout each of these points over the last couple years, in the flat points, you really just get your systems down. You iron out your SOPs, your operating procedures, your team, your role, and then you scale because you push on the revenue gas, you push on scaling. It kind of gets all over the place, and then you flatten out a bit and kind of like reconvene, get back together, get everything sorted. Don't push too hard on the scale. Don't scale too fast, and then you go again. And so you just keep kind of building on top of each other. And that's where like our team has come in. So it started as more like smaller scale like tasks and has now grown into larger, different, more, different level of people as well. And so that's been kind of like the big breakthrough there, I think.
Awesome. And I know there was a second pillar. So you talked about serving founders. So there was like capital, consulting, branding, narrative. Talk to us a little bit about like what you guys are doing. So like a founder comes to you, we used to do this this exercise at BlackRock where it'd be like the life of a transaction. So like, what's the life of you guys like serving a founder at the Rollup Co?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So, let's say, we hop on a call. It's the first time we're meeting someone. Maybe we have a little bit of background on them. First thing we'll do is we'll talk to them about exactly what they're trying to accomplish, right? Like, why are you here? A lot of times, maybe it's to make money, maybe it's to provide a valuable service, but oftentimes, like, you can kind of look through a little bit of that and see what is the deeper meaning of this person's purpose. Once we kind of identify, like, are they trying to push forward technical research or build a valuable product or reach a lot of people or amass a lot of TVL, maybe we'll take a little bit of a deeper look at the project, right? Put them into a bucket. Are they early stage, mid stage, late stage? I think
you lagged for a little bit. You can just start at the last sentence and then go from there. Andy, you remember the last thing you heard?
Yeah, like later stage, early stage.
Cool. So, so a lot of the services, right, that we think are important for founders and builders are going to be like things that, like, again, what we're trying to do is empower founders with knowledge, right? That's a lot of it. A lot of it is then connecting them with our network. And so it's about knowledge and people. I think those are the two fundamental pillars of what we can do and what we provide. We have had a lot of these conversations and a lot of experiences, and what we try to do most impactfully is share these experiences with founders and builders. A lot of these are non-technical, some of them aren't technical, but ultimately, if we think that we're not the right person, we'll connect you with the right person. We like to say that pretty much everyone in the industry is like kind of within reach or a friend of a friend and only 1 degree of separation. And so when we work with a team or a founder, like our network is their network. And it's much, much about like this connective tissue, the glue that a lot of projects can work together, right? And because we don't offer more product technical integrations, a lot of it is connecting them with the right people or with the right knowledge. And that's where I think we can empower founders and provide them a valuable service that ultimately is going to help them progress no matter what stage. But the stage does depend on how exactly we're going to push them forward in what direction. This is how I tend to think about it.
Yeah, just to add on briefly, we do a lot of like branding and positioning workshops in terms of helping teams identify what their main narrative is, what their brand is, what their go-to-market, who they should be associating with, how their founders should be perceived on socials, how they should grow their own socials, what their thoughts are on token, on points, on go-to-market, on all these different types of things that are super important for early stage kind of projects to understand, because they kind of make or break a brand. It's very noisy in crypto. And so you really have to kind of carve out your own blue ocean. And I think that we helped to do a lot of that. I kind of think of that as like a consulting type of arm. And then we help with the distribution side as kind of the second pillar, which is all our platforms that we've built, helping them on podcasts, panels, written research content, and just really trying to facilitate a platform where they can get their ideas out in a non-shilly, incredibly neutral way. It's very important for us and our brand to remain in that light. And to do so sometimes harms the direct short-term revenue that you can drive, but it really shapes the long-term value, which ends up being worth quite a bit more than any sort of like short-term drivers. And then like the last thing is just with funding, albeit we don't have any LPs in on our ventures arm, which is a little bit of alpha. We're going to roll that out in about 2 weeks or so. We are able to kind of write small angel-sized checks to founders over the last 18 months or so, give them some capital, give them some buy-in, and really align with early stage teams, so that way that they know that we're bought in and that we want to support them. And so that is kind of like the third pillar. And so those 3 pillars are basically how we help founders at various stage of their project's development.
Absolutely. And one thing you mentioned was content. So like panels, blogs, Twitter Spaces. What are some of the areas of content that you are very bullish on and some that you don't really advise founders to do?
Yeah, I'm super bullish on founders and teams thinking about their content strategy and their narrative strategy as a barbell. So I think that you should be appealing to, on the right side, or the right curve, the highly technical research crowd, the people in ETH research forums, the people going to SBC conferences, the people who are deep in ZK and all these things. You really want to build a strong base of advisors, angel investors, people that care about your project within this research crowd. And then you want to skip the middle, which is like some kind of like random people who are interact on chain sometimes, who are on centralized exchanges sometimes, kind of care about crypto, but also don't really do that much. And then you also want to optimize for like the pure left curve, which is like the very speculative side of things. So you want to get the people that care about your airdrop, about your token, about the performance of your token, about doing transactions on your protocol, about bringing in TVL liquidity, etc. And so we kind of think to advise people on that kind of barbell strategy, and that's how I think about founders and projects building their own brand.
And then I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Robbie, but if not, we can go into some of the narrative construction, because I think this is a very interesting topic. Like, I don't really know how to construct narrative, so I'll learn from the masters here on how you guys approach it.
Yeah, I think the previous answer leads into this, which is that when we're putting together some of these conversations, we're thinking about who is going to make the most complementary conversation. Sometimes that's not always people are going to agree with one another. A lot of times it's exactly the opposite. It's who is going to disagree with one another, but also be intellectually honest with one another so that we can find a crease in the conversation. We can really identify like, okay, this is where people disagree. Let's talk about it, right? Because that's where there's spice and there's disagreements and it's entertaining content, but also that's where we can learn from each other. No one's got a perfect solution out here. So that's a lot of times where we see the magic happen. I think, to echo Andy's response to the last question, totally, we've seen this strategy work for founders and projects. Ultimately, like a lot of it is amplification from some of those people that lead those intellectual research topics and ideas. Think about Vitalik, right? Like pioneers something, or Satoshi writes a white paper, and then for the next 10 years, people are talking about it, right? So a lot of times it starts with right curve, and then it sort of goes down the line and amplifies from there. A lot of times when we're thinking about narratives and ideas that we believe in, we've been around for a long time. We're going to stay around for a long time, right? So we're not trying to be one of these fly-by-night people that are going to attach ourselves to a particular narrative or be a mouthpiece for an idea that we think isn't going to survive the test of time. Part of my philosophical background, not so much the math one, has taught me like things that are timeless are the ones that really are important, because these are the ones that they have been and they always will be. And so when we're putting together some of these narratives, it's like, okay, who is communicating these ideas that have longevity and then also complement something that is here and now and is going to be able to take this and really, really run with it. A lot of times, people might originate some of these ideas, but when we're thinking about the best way to articulate these narratives, it's about bringing together founders that, again, complement one another. Maybe they're in adjacent verticals or they're all building in a very similar niche. They disagree with each other. It's about designing for the trade-offs. But a lot of it is being intellectually honest and brutally honest with people, because that's how we can articulate these ideas that a lot of people kind of dance around. They don't want to get to the truth of the matter, but that's what we're all about, is getting to the truth of the matter. So we again, brutally honest, get to the meat and potatoes of the conversation. That's where we can really learn from each other. And that's where we think these conversations provide the most value to the listener.
And one thing I've noticed you guys have really focused on, obviously it's in the name, the Rollup, is modular blockchain. So talk to us a little bit about like your idea or your thesis around why to specifically focus there. And if I'm completely wrong on that, do let me know.
Yeah, no, modularity is a key pillar. I'll keep mine short because I think Andy could definitely riff on this for a while, but I put out a tweet that was like, modularity is a bet on entropy. So just kind of unpacking what that means. Basically, this is actually, it relates to something that we talked about before, which is like the levels of scale. And I think we can attribute this to blockchain a little bit, but basically entropy is this idea of like constant unbundling all the time. In the universe, it's ever expanding, it's ever growing. And so we actually see something like that in blockchain and just in software development today, where there's these cycles and entropy doesn't always increase. There's actually these periods that are very concentrated, low entropy, where things collapse and they condense, and then they tend towards unbundling. And so modularity is a bet on unbundling. Essentially, we're going to divide and conquer. We're going to specialize in different verticals. Everyone is better off once you can combine these verticals and they can communicate with one another effectively. And we're kind of going through some of the growing pains now with fragmentation, but we're going to solve those. Modularity is going to end up leading to a much more specialized and optimized experience. And that's what that's all about is modularity. Again, this unbundling process, this divide and conquer and specialize and optimization process. We're going to bundle those back up so that everything's unified, but it is this bet on modularity continuing to expand and unbundle so that we have a lot more optimized systems and everything runs much, much more smoothly and efficiently.
Yeah, I think like less so on the technicals, and as far as like the idea, like, so when you're building a brand in any sort of niche, you have to go narrow with your positioning. The narrower of your positioning, the stronger of the brand that you can build. And so when you look at like crypto research, crypto media, there's a lot of like beginner content. You've got some big players in different verticals, Solana and Ethereum and in NFTs and in gaming. So we really looked at the map of kind of the landscape and we're like, where do we see like some of the biggest blue ocean? And about a year or so ago, maybe a little more, we kind of realized that we were going to rebrand to the Rollup. That had kind of happened, but we didn't realize that we were going to go full down this modular track until about a year ago. We rebranded about 18 months ago. And really, I think like the idea comes from the belief of the core principles of modularity, which comes down to things like sovereignty, developer choice, using the best tool for the job, scaling blockchains. It should be super easy and cheap to launch a blockchain. We should be able to experiment with as many chains as we can. Applications shouldn't have to have noisy neighbors on their chain, causing them gas spikes and congestion. And we should build something that has the best UX for everybody, and that all kind of teams can rally behind and own their own block space and kind of like have this broader idea of modularism, not maximalism. Like we believe that solving the crypto scaling issue of block space isn't done by building more L1s, more monolithic L1s. It's by scaling in a horizontal fashion with what we already have and building L2s and rollups kind of like in this collaborative way. And so it became glaringly obvious to us from a thesis perspective, and then from a business perspective, the thesis perspective more on the venture side, more on the investing side, which we've put our money where our mouth is and funded a ton of these modular projects. But on the kind of business side, it was like, okay, we can either be all things to all people, which isn't a strategy, or we can narrow down and become known for something. And over the last like 9 to 12 months, I think that we've really become known for being like one of the, if not the go-to source for technical information and news and modular content. It's gotten to the point where like people are like kings of modularity and stuff. I should have known that was the top of Celestia in February at ETH Denver when somebody was calling me that. It's quite funny. And so that is kind of like the brand response that we wanted to build, was this very niche brand. And so I would encourage people, if you're listening and building the space, always remember that a narrow brand positioning creates a more polarizing outcome where you really attract people who are really aligned with your thesis. You pull them in and you push away everybody who's not, which ends up allowing you to do a plethora of different things. Most importantly, from an entrepreneur's perspective, is to deliver a higher quality service and thus end up charging higher prices. And then also from a brand perspective, it allows you to build your kind of 1,000 true fans much easier, much faster, which I think is like one of the best ways to really scale your community. And so I would just urge people to think less broadly and think about where there are kind of openings for you to carve out your own blue ocean and really drive that narrow brand, piss people off, make people love you along the way. And I think that that's kind of like the way that I would say, if you're looking to build a brand in the space now, that having a narrow position is the best way to do it.
Yeah, and I'd also self-critique our own podcast here is we started very broad, one, because we couldn't get anyone on the podcast initially. So I was like, anyone that will come on, I'll talk with you. And now we've been much more fortunate with success. But yeah, I think some areas where if I was starting day one, I might create like a podcast called Ton Talks or like a building on Bitcoin topic. So very similar to what you guys do. Like you build a central thesis either around a blockchain or around a concept, and then you just be the person there. So I really like how you guys approach that there. Now, speaking on the new opportunities, if you guys had to start today, and there's already the Rollup exists, you guys have dominated this. What would you guys look to do? Like if you had to start your own dedicated niche podcast today or dedicated niche blog today, what would you base it on?
I would do it on, I mean, there's several things, but I would probably do it on RWAs, like real world assets and that niche. And like this whole idea of like bringing crypto and like all these different types of like financial instruments from the off-chain world into crypto. Or I would do it on, probably something along the lines of like this like consumer narrative that's been going around that I think has longevity, like a very application focused, channel that is focused on creating a better UX for crypto, onboarding new users to apps, trying out different applications, and like kind of focus on like maybe a mix of like chain abstraction and like better UX combined with like scaling consumer crypto. Those would probably be my two that I would kind of go in on.
Yeah, Robbie, you have any input on where you would start?
Yeah. I mean, I love like the way that we started this in terms of the tutorials of apps. I think is going to make a comeback. So I think there's opportunities there. I also like the RWA one. I think like a super critical thing that we need to solve is on and off ramps in a much better way, because everyone, even if you're the most on-chain person out there right now, like you got to go through a centralized exchange. And so if there's a way to somehow incorporate RWAs into that, I think that's a good one. Third, the other one I have is maybe a little bit saturated, but would be like an AI thing, but more specifically like an AI agents using crypto thing, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and starting to see that pop up, and I think that's only going to grow more and more. Yeah, those are my three, and would love more episodes, more podcasts about those. Whether we start them or someone else starts them, I would love that content to exist.
Yeah, we're actually helping Zero Gravity start an AI podcast, so that's coming soon. And now, one thing you guys mentioned earlier was about like grant funding and tutorials. So we interviewed Dynamo DeFi. I don't know if you guys have interviewed Patrick, but a great guy to have on the show. But he talked a little bit about like how he'd made all these tutorials, but he really couldn't figure out a way to successfully monetize this. And I think this is a problem with creators in general in spaces, is it, like they bring something valuable, but they're never able to monetize it without like either becoming very shilly or working with companies they're not 100% aligned on. Not to say Patrick's doing that. He steered quite clear of that, but talk to us a little bit about like how you would advise like new creators or existing creators in order to like actually get some kind of financial backing.
Yeah. I'll start and then hand it to Andy here. So we were very fortunate. When we started, it was 2020. We were an early recipient of an Aave Grants DAO. So we got an Aave grant when they were still Lend. And this was one of the few like grant systems that were available back then. But we kind of took a chance. We ended up riding the appreciation of those Aave tokens, and it sort of founded our initial treasury bankroll and war chest. And then we were able to grow from there. So, then afterwards, it was kind of like, well, after riding some of the public good grant funding, we were able to amass enough podcasts and enough knowledge that people started to entrust us in more of a consulting capacity. So that's been more so the main pillar of our business since. I would suggest for people that are starting out, again, you got to start by like talking to people, getting a network. Then you can start to utilize these people, build their value and contribute to the network, and you'll find a way to fit in and contribute value. I would say that, now that there's enough retro funding, retro PGF type funding from Optimism, there's all of these milestones out there. There's enough grants going, and now there's so much more VC funding in the ecosystem that I would say, the best way to find a way to monetize is going to be, look at the projects that are announcing like these massive VC raises. Go talk to someone at a conference at that team, figure out what kind of incentive programs they have. They probably have some, if you're technical, they definitely have some developer grants or application grants. If you're non-technical, they probably have some way for you to get involved in either a marketing or a business development capacity or a referral type capacity. There's all kinds of grant programs and incentive programs out there. The best way, just the ones that have the biggest pie right now, are going to be the ones with these massive VC announcements. And then you'll be able to niche down, and you can find more so the ones that really are authentic to you and where you're going to be able to maximize value from there. That's how I would go about it. Andy, what would you say there?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a lot of ways I would just further reinforce to kind of get out there, create content, network, and then the monetization models are going to be advertising on some sort of podcast or newsletter with banners and advertising slots, various different types there's a lot of paid content and sponsored content that you can do, different types of BD efforts, referral programs. You can do retroactive grants. You can apply for different grants on different governance forms, or you can just get a job. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a creator and then just getting a job in the space and then using your kind of platform to negotiate a better rate or something like that. I honestly think getting a job in the space for the first year or two is really not a bad idea at all before kind of branching out. It gives you time to get paid to build your network, and then you can kind of use that to build your platform and then go off and do it on your own. So that would be kind of some of my suggestions there.
Yeah, and I want to follow up with what Andy said, because I think, I also run a podcast called the Internet Money Podcast, and we're not always the kindest of wages, but in terms of, like, let's say you build your own, media platform, and then you go work at like Arbitrum or Optivism, maybe even as like a junior level in their like grants foundation. Like, what would that set you up to do? Like, if you got like worked on 100 project or 100 grant requests, like, it's something I'm considering personally, and it's quite interesting. I think that's something creators should definitely look at. Like, if you look at like Size Chat, he works for Arbitrum. Like, a bunch of these guys end up working there. Had you guys ever considered that route, or you guys were 100% like entrepreneur, were like surviving long enough to get noticed?
Yeah, I mean, I've considered it for sure in bear markets and things, but it never really worked out. I don't think Rob really has. We've just been doing this, and it's working out really well now. So definitely happy just to keep it rolling. But I definitely think that it's worth a shot and that people should consider it.
Yeah, and you mentioned Size Chat at Arbitrum. I think that's a good example. He's great, and you see some of the strategy now. Like, look at Monad, right? Monad is intern. They've got, I think, Thread Guy. Cryptoons, right? So like the strategies there where these projects want these people and these platforms and want to leverage their channels. So I think absolutely there is a path for that, and we've seen the path. It doesn't mean you have to give up everything that maybe you've worked on that account first. You don't have to give that up in order to go work at a platform. So that's one way for anyone who's a little bit further along and's been creating content. I don't know the age demographic of this podcast. If it is like college student type of realm, I mentioned at the beginning of this, like, I got my start at the University of Florida Blockchain Club, right? This club has allowed, for one, we threw a conference on campus. We connected with foundations and other organizations out there. For instance, Blockchain Education Network, Ben. The North American Bitcoin Conference in Miami. There's now Dorm DAO and College DAO, which came on the scene a little bit after I graduated. But these are organizations that are specifically trying to help college students get connected in the Web3 space. And again, your network and your relationships are the jumping off point for whatever you want to do, whether it's entrepreneurial or just get a good job. So for anyone that is like college age going to some of these universities, get involved. Almost all of the colleges now have some sort of university blockchain club. Get involved there. Happy to connect you guys with College DAO, Dorm DAO, or Ben if you guys want, some of those connections. They're great for helping you go to conferences at a young age. You know, the ability to just be in the same room as some of these people that are managing billion-dollar treasuries or billion-dollar protocols, just bend their ear. They want to talk to young people. They want to get a sense of how a younger generation is thinking about this industry. So for anyone that's in the college aged range, like an amazing way, an amazing opportunity to get involved is to go through some of those college organizations.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for being so appreciative of your time. So if there are any like milestones that are coming up, anything that people can look forward to, I know Andy dropped some alpha earlier, but where people can kind of just look forward to what you guys are doing.
We got shit cooking, my boy. I'll leave it at that.
All right. So, okay, if you got stuff cooking, where can they follow you guys online so that they can just keep in touch and keep on top of things? Shout out your Twitter, shout out the website.
Yeah, my Twitter is Robbie __ Rollup on Twitter, ROBBIE _Rollup. And then the website is therollup.co. It's the Rollup company, therollup.co. Andy's Twitter, I think, is A 3 Ys E Andy on Twitter. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube. We post the content everywhere. So even if you just look up like the Rollup Crypto or Rollup Crypto Podcast or something like that, we'll come up. And yeah, I don't want to sound too mysterious. There's a lot of things that we've been working on behind the scenes and have started to drop some teasers that we're really, really excited about. Things that have just with the same motivation that has powered us up until this point about empowering founders, broadening our knowledge base with the rest of the industry. We're going to further that mission with a renewed sense of vigor and intense acceleration, and bring this knowledge to the masses in the form of podcasts, virtual conferences, educational series, funding, angel deals, services, websites, activations, all across the map. We've got a ton of stuff cooking, and I'm really excited about it.
Awesome, Robbie. Well, thank you so much for coming on. To all the guests or to all the listeners, go engage with the Rollup Co. online. Go follow their Twitter. Go follow Robbie. They're putting out incredible content that I'm a firm believer in, and I'm excited to see where you guys take it. And to everyone else, let's continue building the future of Web3.